Hi, everybody. So tonight is the second night of presentations by applicants to CPC. This year we had 5 last night. We're going to have 5 more tonight. And we don't have to approve or vote on any minutes because we did that last night. So if nobody has any announcements to make, I think we can get right down to business. And the first applicant is the Second Parish Church. Their clock tower needs some work. And when you come on up, if you could just announce who you are as you're going to speak, that would be great.
So this is our PowerPoint presentation.
Okay.
So hopefully you can all see it, but we can bring it closer when we need to refer to it. Yeah, you can just hold it. So welcome to our PowerPoint presentation. This is, we're here on behalf of Second Parish in Hingham. This is Susan Weisenbach. She was the past president of the leadership board at the time that our steeple project was initiated. And she is still on the steeple project. It's still in progress. This is Jane Shute. She's also one of our members, and she's on the leadership board as well. And she knows a lot about the history of Second Parish. She also created our PowerPoint presentation, because she's a teacher. That's what she does. I am also a member of the leadership board. Can't really explain my role here, but
you are Lisa Shetty.
I am Lisa Shetty. All right, so for those of you who could not attend the site visit, we pointed out to those who were there that we always strive to be good caretakers of the 4 historic buildings that we have on our property. So that includes the church, the hearse house, the parsonage, and the barn. So in the last 2 years, while investigating the source of water damage to the ceiling over the balcony, we did an exhaustive search for a skilled steeplejack, and there aren't many left. And we entered into an agreement with Bob Coteau of Heritage Steeplejack Construction to conduct the necessary repairs. And I think if you look in your packet, you can see what that damage was water leaking in around the columns in the bell tower. So since we had already painted the south and east facing sides of Second Parish, we asked him to give us a comprehensive estimate with a breakdown of the entire steeple, which is part of the point of this visual here so that you can see the different parts of the steeple, and I'll point those out in a bit. So that includes the bell tower or the belfry, the clock tower, which includes the 4 clock faces, which we're talking about tonight, and the apex over the vestibule.
This triangle here.
That triangle. So all of those pieces of the steeple were too high for the painter that we had who painted the south and east facing sides, and he actually is the one that recommended that we get a steeplejack for what we assumed was then just painting, but it turned out to be more repairs and restoration to the belfry and now to the clock faces. And since he was going to be there already to do the repairs, it seemed to be more cost effective to do that work while all the staging and scaffolding was in place. But ultimately we decided we had to phase the work, so we broke it down into these 2 or 3 components depending on the way you look at it. But basically it's the bell tower, which is complete, the clock faces, and then the painting of the apex and the clock tower itself, which is the clapboards. So included in our grant proposal is a detailed estimate of the work involving restoring the clock tower. I would like to point out that the amount that we're requesting is less than 1/3 of the overall cost of the steeple project. To date, we have completed the necessary repairs and painting to the bell tower, and still remaining is restoration of clock faces, sanding and painting of the clapboards on the clock tower. Is that, I'm on a timer?
No, that's Vicky saying she's still in Southfield. She'll do her best.
Okay. Thanks for that update. So still remaining is the restoration of the clock faces, the sanding and painting of the clapboards of the clock tower, and the apex over the vestibule. So again, we're only requesting CPC funds for the restoration of the clock faces. So while we understand that the CPC may support a project, but how funds are allocated during any CPC cycle is contingent on many factors, so we understand that. We just wanted to talk about the urgency of this project a little bit. And that urgency is that while we believe we can fundraise the money necessary for the painting portion of it, which is the 16.5 and 11.3 for the clock tower clapboards in the front apex, that we're limited at this point. We will not be able to cover the cost of the restoration of the clock faces. We have a small congregation, and we've already asked members to donate towards several other maintenance projects in the last couple of years. And while these maintenance projects aren't always sexy, they are necessary to prevent further deterioration, which leads to necessary restoration. So when we're talking about these clock faces, the delay may lead to further deterioration. All faces have significant weather exposure, and they are 140 years old approximately. So further deterioration could affect the currently working mechanism of the clocks, which was just upgraded, I believe, in the last 2 years. Is that correct? And subsequently, the cost of the work could go up. So that's the urgency. And lastly, we just wanted to mention that we will be 275 years old in 2021, and it is our sincere hope that the building is celebration ready and that the structure is in good shape for the next generation of caretakers, and that's our goal. So we thank you for your consideration, and if you have any questions.
Bless you. Lisa, just could you say for the folks at home how much you're asking for? It sounds like you're putting in 27, but you didn't mention the number you're going for.
Okay, so the work that has been, do you want to do this or you want me to do it?
Sure. So to restore the clock faces, we're asking for $32,030. And that it ends up that much because it was broken down from the whole bid for the whole project. Is that enough?
We just needed to get
Yeah,
started.
so the painting of the clock tower clapboards and then the front apex is that combination, which comes up to 27 something, 28.
And what's different about this project than when we held before, that was for the mechanism, and this is for the actual clock
Yes,
faces.
and we did not initiate that request for the mechanism. That was something completely separate from us. We didn't come here at all. We were just contacted to say, can we get into the church and take a look at it? Can we get into the church to fix it? So that wasn't our request.
I'm not accusing you of a previous request. I just want to be clear that
Yeah,
it's two different things.
it's completely two different things. However, we are, worried that the mechanism does depend on the structural integrity of those clock faces.
Any other questions, comments from the floor? Okay, thank you so much.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I make one more comment?
Yes, should they stay there?
Wendy Lehner wrote a very interesting article about your church some time ago. I started out as a very barren, simple meeting house, and then you got some money and added the columns, and you got some more money and added the tower, and then you got some more money and put up the steeple, and then it became a colonial church after a long period of improvements. But the original church was a very simple, barren.
It was a meeting house, yeah.
Meeting house.
Yeah. And so Jane we didn't bring it with us, but Jane has another board like this that she created that kind of outlines the history, that you can see when each portion was added.
Yeah.
And we usually show that when the church is open for the house tour.
It's just interesting. It's like some houses that became colonial later.
Yeah. Well, and it did have shutters at one point too, so everything was added, when maybe things were trendy or, different needs.
Initially, it was made in 1742 to look like the other houses around. It was a meeting house and it matched some of the other properties, so it didn't have a steeple or balcony.
Did that get caught on the mic?
Yeah.
It did, great.
Okay. All right.
Okay, again, thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks. Good luck.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is a demarcation along some of the Lehner conservation land, and Lonnie Fournier from the town will be presenting.
Is the lighting okay for you with respect to seeing the slides? Too bright? Okay. going to attempt to wield two different but identical remotes. One has some functionality that the other one doesn't. So my name is Lonnie Fournier. I'm the Senior Planner for Conservation and GIS here in town. Tonight I'm representing the Conservation Commission, and we are interested in making some improvements to the Lehner Conservation Area. At first, I thought it would be helpful to have a quick review of the Lehner Conservation Area. It was acquired in 2017. It's 51 acres, has frontage on both Main Street and South Pleasant Street. It abuts residential properties and Jacobs Meadow. That's a conservation property owned by the Hingham Land Conservation Trust, open to the public. The majority of the property has pre-existing clear boundaries in the variety of stone walls and, in one case, a split rail fence. And there's a long-established connecting trail system that goes throughout the property as well as all the way to the north on Jacobs Meadow. Recently, the commission installed an identification sign on South Pleasant Street, and probably the major downfalls right now is that there is no wayfinding information on the property, and there's also no formal parking area. And I'm going to go over each of these with a map. They say a picture is 1,000 words, so bear with me as I point out a few things to you. So I'm going to be coming back to this map a few different times during the presentation. You don't have to absorb everything right now. The key points are the 1, 2, 3, 4 parcels that are outlined in green. 1, 2, 3, 4. Those are the Lehner property parcels. The wooden sign that I mentioned is down here on South Pleasant Street. The Jacobs Meadow property, conservation land up here, and then you can see all along Main Street and all along South Pleasant Street we have a variety of private residential land as neighbors. And like I said, there's no wayfinding information. All these other little icons that you see on the map, this is where a trail crosses the stone wall, and then over here we have some stream crossings, but the trail system goes from one side of the property to the other and connects to a great trail system up in Jacobs Meadow as well. So the scope of this, one thing I forgot to cover are the existing boundaries. So this parcel is sort of isolated on its own. It has a stone wall running up either side. This parcel has a stone wall here. The boundary here isn't as critical. It's open space, although I do think that there's remnants of a stone wall there. There's a stone wall that runs up this piece here, but then this property, a little bit further back is a stone wall here, but these boundaries here are a little bit unclear, and I'll get into that in a few slides. So the project scope is to clearly define those boundaries in that section of the property, and the idea for doing that is to install a matching split rail fence. As I mentioned earlier, there's a split rail fence on a different portion of the property. This would be a coordinating feature. And then we also want to improve visitor experiences and install 2 kiosks to provide wayfinding information. Essentially, this would be a kiosk with a map in it, as well as any historical or other key feature type of information. And with these features, I think it will enable the commission to be a better steward of the land. We're providing clear pathways for the visitors. We're providing plenty of information on the property and allowing people to find their own way around. And I also think it would be helpful to our neighbors, the abutters, to have clear boundaries as well, and hopefully prevent any potential conflicts that may occur by a visitor wandering onto their property. Let's keep their space safe, and let's keep our visitors informed and directed properly. There is no parking area proposed at this time. That will require additional design and permitting, and currently there's an active road moratorium on South Pleasant Street that ends in 2022. So we're a few years out from being able to put a formal parking area on the property. This is just an image of the fence. So this is across, the next slide is a map I can show you, but this is the existing split rail fence on the property. The proposed fence would match this style, provide uniformity, and allow the public to recognize that this fence and this fence belong to the conservation land, so now I'm on public property. And then the picture on the right-hand side is an example of a kiosk that's installed off of the Lehner property, but these same kiosks were installed across town a few years ago thanks to some CPC funding. So it would match that style. Again, matching styles lets people know it's public, it's conservation land, I can enter here. So the split rail fence, the existing one that I mentioned, is across the street next to Fulling Mill Pond. It runs along South Pleasant Street and then down to the pond. So it's featured on this parcel only. The rest of the boundaries are primarily stone walls. The kiosks proposed would go back here on this parcel and back here on this parcel. South Pleasant Street is a scenic road, and I'm trying to be considerate of that pastoral landscape and everything that everyone appreciates about it. So setting the kiosks back into the property, I think, would be an advantage. It's very clear, this trail is very clear from South Pleasant Street, so you wouldn't necessarily need anything right up front. And in this location, when you're coming down from Jacobs Meadow, this is a real key point where you're pausing on the trail and wondering which way to go. So I think by putting the kiosk there will provide some helpful information. And then the fence is outlined in red on the slide, so it will go across this boundary here. And I collected a few images to provide a little bit of a walking tour for you so you can see what the conditions are today and just how confusing it is for people to navigate on the property. And I think it's confusing from the visitor's perspective and potentially confusing from the abutter's perspective as well. So this is the frontage on South Pleasant Street. From one parcel to the start of ours is 108 feet. This is looking east, in other words, towards Lozelle Street. I have another photo coming up. Again, 108 feet from the end of one of our parcel, and it goes all the way over to that existing gate that you can see there. That is from the former owner that was existing on the property. Certainly, if this proposal was approved or accepted, our portion, the town's portion of that lattice work would come down to further provide clear access to the property. Anything that happens to the right, so from the gate over, that is private, and it would be up to them to decide what to do with that. And so those two images are focusing on this section right here, 108 feet from the corner where there's a stone wall over to the corner where we have this frontage here. So guiding people in from South Pleasant Street along this sort of access path there. And next we're going to head north along the property line. So we're looking at the gate, that key feature again. Our property line is 180 feet between the gate and the tree line in the middle there. And this is a different view. You can see the gate. I'm standing at the tree line. You can see it's 180 feet. And this is where it becomes a little bit more obvious that the boundaries are not clearly marked. We have some lawn mowing that's happening on the town side of the property. There were survey stakes in place. They're just wooden. They were not intended to be permanent, but those stakes are gone, and so they're not providing any guidance, and the area is being maintained as you see it here in this photo. And so, again, we were looking at photos in this stretch, and next we're going to this stretch. So we're standing at the very back corner. That boulder, and there is a survey stake there, is the rear corner of the property, and that second leg is 184 feet long. So from the boulder, at a little bit of an angle towards the tree line, is 184 feet that divides the private property from the public property. Again, here you can see some mowing has extended onto the conservation land, and so it would provide a more clear boundary of what's public and what's private and where to walk and where to mow. Again, so we were standing here at this corner, sorry I'm so shaky, looking down this way at this segment. Next we're going to look across the back. And so that's the boulder on the corner again, and straight ahead of us for 345 feet is on the right-hand side is the private property, and on the left-hand side is town property. Now I'm standing at the end of the trail where the kiosk would be, and you can see, if you imagine walking through an open meadow and you get to this point, you're just not sure where to go. You're faced with a lot of private improvements to land. You feel like you're walking onto their property, and in reality, there's quite a bit of space there that you can get back around to South Pleasant Street and complete the loop on the trail. And then just to the left of this photo, so all the way to the left, if you pivot, you get to this, which is an existing gravel driveway that had been there since the Lehners owned the land. It provides access all the way to the rear of the meadow. This in particular is not an area where someone would walk down. It feels like you're walking onto private property, but to provide some guidance here, the town owns all the way over to a stream that's way past the view of this photo, but it would not be, I would guess that it would not be someone's inclination to walk down this driveway to get back to South Pleasant Street, but if someone decided to choose the path of least resistance and just wanted to get to South Pleasant Street and get home, this could be an option that they take, and it would take someone right through the heart of the private property, and that would, I think, be most jarring to our neighbors. And so just one last highlight here is that we're looking across the back. This is where the boulder is, and we're looking towards here. This is the end of their property, but like I said, we own all the way over to a stream that runs north-south here. The trail system does not continue down in this area. There's a private residential property here. It makes no sense to bring people down this far, so really the goal is to get them through this area and back down to South Pleasant here. So in order to implement these improvements, we would first need to restake the property boundary. As I mentioned before, the property stakes have been removed in some sections. We want to make sure that the fence is put in the correct location. I have an estimated cost of $1,800 for that. That is from the surveyor who originally did the work, so it's my guess that that will be the best estimate we get. He's just redoing his work as compared to starting from scratch. The kiosks will be right around $1,200. That's from the same company where all the other kiosks were ordered from, again, providing uniform material. The fence could be installed next summer. I did desperately try to get multiple quotes from fence companies. It is surprisingly challenging to get responses from them. I even met a fence company on site and walked the boundaries with them and still did not get a written estimate from them. So the current estimate that I have in hand is for a little over $18,000, and again, that will match the existing 3-rail fence across the street next to Fulling Mill Pond. And then finally, installing the kiosks in the whole kiosk project before this one, DPW was a great lending hand. They managed to carry out that project from start to finish. So they assembled the kiosks, they got the concrete, put them in the ground. It went really well. So estimated $250 for that work, bringing us to a total of $21,754. In terms of oversight and maintenance, the entire project will be overseen by conservation staff here in Town Hall. We'll coordinate with private contractors, the kiosk vendor, and DPW. And probably an added bonus here is that there's little or no maintenance for probably the first 5 years at a minimum. All of the materials purchased will be pretty resilient in an outdoor setting. The fence is constructed of cedar and pressure-treated wood. The company that I got the quote from guarantees their work for 2 years. And the kiosks have proven to be very resilient. They've been up for a little while and are showing no signs of wear and tear. Recycled plastic, stainless steel, plastic windows, and weatherproof seals and locks. That was a crash course in the Lehner Conservation Area, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Anybody?
How many people use it currently?
I don't have visitor numbers, but I do see cars parked on the South Pleasant Street side. And I have spoken with a neighbor, and I got some positive feedback from them, and they said that they do see people using the property, but there hasn't been any negative conflicts in their opinion. There's been some interesting activity related to metal detecting and hunting. Hunting is not allowed on the property, so I'm trying to work on that. I don't have an exact number, but certainly it's become definite public knowledge that it's public land now. I think initially there was some hesitation. Did we buy it? Did we not buy it? Now that it's signed, I think it is getting used. The trails are not becoming overgrown, which also leads me to believe that it's being used. Trails are best maintained by foot traffic.
Could you put the parcel map back up?
The parcel map,
Oh, is this area, that's private also, huh?
yep, right up the middle here is private land.
But are there no issues there in terms of?
No issues there. There's a stone wall that runs along this side, which keeps people on our property. And there's no indication that anyone is coming from South Pleasant Street onto the private property here. This parcel is wooded all the way to the edge, and so there is no trailhead. It blends in. To be honest with you, the wooded area in between this parcel and this parcel make it seem like this whole stretch is private.
So you could walk across and you would be trespassing, but not seriously. I mean,
Correct. Yep.
it would
There
not
is
be
a stone wall that runs all the way to the back. This parcel has a conservation restriction on it, and the trail connection is on this side. Yes, technically you could walk straight across here. Towards the back, it's very wet. I'm not sure that many people would want to do that, but yes, from South Pleasant Street all the way to this line here, this whole middle stretch is private land.
And the other thing, are there any plans for there's a pumping station, right? And the parcel to the south, by the pond?
No,
There's no
there's no buildings here, but this is, this parcel right next door is Aquarian land, soon to be town land. So this is the Fulling Mill pumping station. I think their access driveway is right around the bend here. It comes down.
Okay, that was the only time, I thought it was within that piece. It
No,
isn't.
there's no buildings on this southern parcel right here. Nothing, just some beautiful trees, nice view of the pond, and a split rail fence.
Thanks.
Mhm.
Can I ask, in the middle, the private middle area, is there a house on that property?
This skinny piece here,
Yeah.
yep, the house is right there up front. So the house is very much on the street and visible from the street. They maintain a wide lawn/meadow area to the back here, and then it's wooded all the way to the back. So you can see a little bit of the break in the ortho photo there where it's lawn to the house and then trees all the way to the back.
So Lonnie, that walking trail, a piece of it is not really for the public, right?
This,
Yeah.
myself and the Hingham Land Conservation Trust are working with this property owner to ensure that public access is here. And so it's a continued effort to make sure that this trail is open to the public. It's well used right now. We have had some issues with people sort of coming up into the lawn area here. We want to try to prevent that. So we're working with the property owner to make sure that they feel secure in allowing the public to cross, and then making sure both sides are protected in terms of allowing public access across the property.
Okay. Other questions?
Yeah, I have a question.
Mhm.
So the dotted line, is the intention to create a mowed trail? Because if along the fence line, that area is grown out, is
Mhm.
that going to be then have a mowed, just a single path to get back there?
That's the
or-
intent. So it would be a mowed path, or if that turns out to be too labor intensive, I rely primarily on DPW to help with maintenance of open space properties, and they have their own fair share of work across town. So if it becomes too labor intensive, we could consider doing like maybe a wood chip surface to elongate the period of time that the trail is visible, the path is visible. Certainly no one enjoys walking through knee-high or thigh-high grass, so we would want to provide a point of access, a clear point of access, and make sure that it's passable and enjoyable for visitors. Mowing would be the first option, and I think we would get some long-term, maintenance-free access if we put down some natural surface there, wood chips.
Judy?
There's the inverse of that. What has the butter said about the mowing of the town land? Will that stop?
I've had a phone conversation with them, and they indicated that they would ask their landscapers to stop mowing onto our property. I also know that the legally responsible thing to do on behalf of the town is to send a letter formally requesting that activity to stop. As of last week, I met with town council and I'm working on that. So it will happen. It's just for the best interest of the town. As it stands right now, it's just been a verbal agreement that they'll ask their landscapers to stop. The difficult piece is that I don't know where they'll know where to stop. There's nothing that marks where the line is, just that boulder in the back corner.
And Lonnie, the house is the old Lehner house, right?
Correct, yep.
Very grand place.
Yes, it was recently redone. It's a white farmhouse-looking style.
Changed, okay.
Yep. It used to be like a peachy yellow.
With quite a facade, and it was just amazing.
Exactly,
structure.
yep.
Judy?
So, as everybody knows, we were on a site visit, and this picture is great, but the site visit made very clear, I think, to the people who visited, that there is an issue with that, with the definition of that property, the line that you've indicated with the red line. But we also know that we are strapped for cash this year.
Sure.
And so I'm wondering if you see a possibility of making this a two-phase process where we funded the restaking, but instead of just using the little stakes that typically they use maybe those types of posts that you see on the trustees' land at the top of Turkey Hill. They're just kind of guide posts that stand about 5 feet tall in several locations along there, so that next year we could reconsider the fence part, and it would be and you wouldn't have to do that part again, and then also do the kiosks and install the kiosks this year, because it does feel like people need guidance as to where to go, particularly if it's snowing and you can't see the beaten down path.
I mean, we were there in the fall, and it was not apparent. It wasn't clear.
Yeah, particularly around the back of that property, it's really not apparent with that little cart path that comes down. I think it's just magnificent land and should be comfortably used by everyone, and so I think that the staking with guideposts of a certain kind that would be useful in knowing where the boundaries are in the future, and the kiosks. Is that possible?
I think so. I would be most comfortable with an above the ground identification. I know that in terms of marking boundaries, oftentimes like a granite block will be sunk into the ground. I think to meet the goal of making it easy to use, it needs to be something that you don't have to search for, because then you're still wandering and looking for where the granite is. So I think something that sticks above ground would be useful, and I'm most supportive of something that would be visible at more than just the corners. This stretch is just too far. You stand here and you can't see the boulder back here, and there's a line of trees in the middle. So just having stuff at the corners, I also think would not be very helpful. So I could pursue a quote for just having the posts, and maybe with the help of some staff, sort of mark out what the greatest distance would be that we think would provide the clearest boundary marker, but not be, every 2 feet have it be a post,
right.
Not to overdo it, and see if that would be an option.
I think that would be helpful.
Is there any chance of acquiring the north-south strip?
Jim, just Lonnie's just going to answer Judy, and
sorry.
then you can talk.
No, I'm asking you if you think that would be helpful to have the posts. I mean, just outside of the cost. Have you seen those tall stakes at the top of Turkey Hill?
Mm-hmm.
Like markers, you kind of lead the way. I don't know. You were there.
It's a thought.
Has any inquiry been made, or is the abutter willing to participate in the cost of a fence? It seems that it would be in their interest also to pay for some portion of that fence.
I contacted the abutter primarily to let them know that I was pursuing this project, and to be honest, and they were very honest with me, they are not interested in a fence. They sounded a little disappointed that it would have to come to putting up a fence, and so if I had to guess, I would say they would not be interested in sharing the cost of that.
But hasn't some of this issue come about because the abutter has complained about people coming onto their property?
I've heard through the environmental community that there has been some negative interactions. I haven't confirmed that, between visitors and the abutter. I haven't spoken to the people that it happened to, and when I did speak to the abutter, they had Just a few stories not related to the common visitor of activities that were of concern to them, but otherwise said everything was fine and that they haven't had many people sort of wandering right onto their property. So this project is very much an identified need of the town and not in response to a request from the abutter to put up a fence. Your visitors have gone wild, they're all over a property. That's not it at all. So I can't stress that enough. It may be conceived that, you know, we could be paying for a fence for their property. That's not it. We are not pursuing a fence on behalf of them or at their request. I think honestly they would prefer not to see a fence in place. But even with the mowing activities restrained, it's not clear where to walk. And I think to be a good steward of the land, we need to make that more clear.
Would there be any chance of acquiring the north-south strip eventually to fill in that gap? not the whole of it, but just
I don't know. Is CPC willing to give me $500,000 to buy that? We haven't had any conversations with that property owner. I'm not sure what their appetite would be for selling to the town.
It's not grazed or planted or anything, right?
No, it's just forest. It's just forest right now.
Absorbing CO2, a good thing.
Yeah.
Other questions or comments from the floor? Okay. Oh, yeah?
Sorry, I'm just out of
Deirdre, why don't you come to a mic?
Oh, sorry.
Thanks, Lonnie. Sorry. Just out of curiosity, those trail marks are just to identify roads. They're not a trail system. Because the one coming down
Correct.
would be where that road was that you identified?
Exactly. So this is the cart path. It probably goes to about here. It's drivable, and these trails reflect all of the trails / roads that were on the property when the town acquired it. So this is that cart path continuing from the stone wall all the way out to South Pleasant Street. Sorry, I hit the mic there. So these are certainly not open to the public right now. These are private, and the goal would be to somehow connect this Esker Trail back over instead of leaving it abandoned here. Worst case scenario, right now it's directing people right onto the private land, which isn't good. But redirecting a trail is pretty easy. We just need clarity here and here, mostly.
Anyone else? Lonnie, thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Next up, Mark Thorell is going to speak on behalf of the Recreation Commission to fix the tennis courts at the Plymouth River School. Oh, and he has handouts.
Good evening. Mark Thorell, Director of Hingham Recreation, here tonight representing the Recreation Commission's grant asked to fund the renovation of the tennis courts at Plymouth River School. I'd like to start off by mentioning that the town of Hingham is in the middle of conducting an athletic field and outdoor court study, which involves looking at the town tennis courts. The study has not reached the recommendation phase yet. However, the Rec Commission feels a sense of responsibility to provide safe courts to the Hingham community, and some of the cracks at the Plymouth River tennis courts have become so large that by next spring they could start to become unsafe. And knowing that we're in the middle of this study, I have personally talked to the Weston and Sampson team, and I kind of explained the context of the situation that we're in, and they said that they would never recommend changing the usage of where the tennis courts lie. They would never recommend bulldozing them and putting in an athletic field. There's not enough room there. Their one question was, would this be the right fix, the right way process? Would that be the right fix? And I asked them what are more longer-term solutions to it. One process is you can mill the top 1.5-inch layer of asphalt off the court and repave the top 1.5-inch layer. That's $250,000. The next one is to completely take off the asphalt and put brand new asphalt, the full 2.5 inches, and that's $350,000. So when you factor in the finances along with the longevity piece, I really do feel like the right way process is the right way to go. And what the right way process does is simply puts what they call a membrane. They fill in the cracks, and they put this membrane over the cracks, and then resurface the tennis courts. This was the exact process that was done with the high school tennis court renovation done in 2012. So it's been 7 years. I have visited the high school courts recently, and there is cracks starting to form back, and they have had to have the company come out and repatch a couple times during the years, but no major expense. And so I feel like if we were able to get this 7-year window that the high school has got with the same process, it makes financial sense to go with this solution over paying 4 or 6 times the cost, even if you get more years out of that way. So kind of went through, explained the right way process. Everyone has pictures of the cracks. Guess at this point open up to see if anyone has any questions at all.
Anybody? From the floor? Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Alan Perral for a master plan for the Inner Harbor.
Katie Duran of the Harbor Development Committee is with me. Deirdre Anderson, Bruce McElhoney of Harbor Development here, and Ed Johnson of the trustees is also here. I've made copies of our presentation and also copies of the slide of a pamphlet that was done in Burlington, Vermont. And Harbor is kind of shows kind of what the existing plan is. The slide is not that busy, but I think it's interesting. Okay, so this is a joint application of the trustees of the Bathing Beach and the Harbor Development Committee. Last year, when an application was filed, it was really just the Harbor Development Committee at the time. And we realized, the trustees did, as we started looking, as our building was making a little progress. We obviously had another focus last year, was trying to get the snack stand community room building built. And we went to you people, and you were fortunate in giving us the money we needed for a contingency, which we'll need 98% of, if not 99%. But it will get us through what we have to do. So we realized, and the other thing, just as a quick precursor, you've got a plan there in front of you that I gave you. In the process of doing the snack stand, we had to do a survey of the property to know exactly where we were going to put the snack stand. Well, long story short, in the process of doing that, it turns out that the trust land actually is almost an extension of Ship Street. And the bandstand, it turns out, is actually on land that was deeded to the trustees. Now, it was water at the time, and that area was a narrow strip of land, but when land gets filled in, the land goes to who has the deed to the property. So I think that was kind of unknown for a long period of time. Now the selectmen maintain that, and they've recently improved it, and their shingles have matched the shingles we have on the bandstand. That's just kind of an aside, but I think it gave more reason why we thought it would make sense for the trustees to work jointly with the Harbor Development Committee on this issue. As many of you know, in fact CPC funded it, funded the original 2007 master plan, and its goals is itemized there. To create contiguous, safe, attractive, universally accessible pedestrian access along the harbor, increase mixed public recreational opportunities, and identifying projects on the near term. that has shown, that at the time was a vision of what the beach was going to be look like. We've done something way more substantial, as you know, with the buried wall and the dune structure. That vision wouldn't have worked. So these are the projects, and you've got a larger version of that have been completed since 2007. And, you know, a number of people have got frustrated how long this process takes, but I think all things considered, since 2007, we've made a pretty good dent in doing that. On the upper, on the north side, you see the extension of the walkway through the grove. Then in front of that is the armor stone wall that was done to protect that area from erosion. It's worked very well. Then you come across the area where I was referring to, where we buried a concrete wall, did the dune project, the parking behind it. Behind that, you see the note of where the new building is. Then you get to the bandstand. The walkway was done this past year there, as you're aware. Then we get to the parking lot that is essentially controlled by the state because it's for the boat ramp. That is in the process. There's a design that's been agreed to, and we optimistically, Ken Corson thinks that within the next 2 years, that area would be redone, and we hope to incorporate a walkway into that when it's done. Then you get to the Iron Horse Park area, where we would need to continue the walkway. That area is one of the first areas being considered by the Harbor Development and the Selectmen for raising that probably at least a full granite block. So that work has to proceed, doing a walkway extension. Then it gets you to the Whitney Wharf Bridge. And Whitney Wharf, which just is an aside, is kind of the elevation that the Harbor Development and the Selectmen are shooting for. I think that's about 14 foot 5 inches something, Bruce. So that's kind of the elevation they're shooting for. At Iron Horse Park and the others is a common elevation. That's also what we've been dealing with. The buried seawall accounts for that. The elevation of the new bathhouse accounts for that. So we have been proactive in trying to deal with climate change issues as well as we do these improvements. Then you get yourself to the Veterans Park, the mobile site, which not a whole lot's been done, the private Hastings Wharf area, then the stretch that goes along near the Rotary, which Judy's most aware of because that's being looked at as part of the 3A corridor project. Then you get to Barnes Wharf, which is where the Maritime Center is, and then last is Steamboat Wharf. And again, there's obviously the current condition of the new bathhouse, the Whitney Wharf Bridge, the walk through the Grove, and the Armor Stone Wall are shown there.
Alan, are
yeah.
you going to keep referring to things because we have a pointer?
Okay, yeah, I can use that, I guess.
Okay,
Yeah.
that would be helpful.
Do we have it, or let me take it? It's there. Okay, good idea. Okay.
No, this is, there's a pointer on there. There's a red.
No, I don't want to power off. No. No.
Oh, here it is.
Oh, there it is.
That's why it wouldn't work. That was the pointer.
It was the pointer, okay. And what button do I hit? Just the green one? Okay. So again, you have the lower left is obviously the picture. I'm just going to go pictures for that because I've talked about it. So that there's the new. Just so you know, the concession area is on the right-hand side. The community room's on the left. The restrooms are in the rear. And there will be a railing system around the whole thing. Whitney Wharf Bridge is the picture on the left. Middle is the harbor walk that was completed through the Grove area.
But can you show us on the V?
He wants you to show him.
Okay. And which one are you hitting?
This one.
All of it?
No, I'm showing him which button to hit.
Oh, the green one. Okay. So there's the area going through the Grove. There's the Armor Stone Wall right in front of it. Then you go down, and here's the stretch along where we buried the seawall, buried the granite wall with the dune. Here's the community room and snack stand. Here's the area that we did last year, essentially the extension of the walkway. This is, again, where you're going across the state's lot for the boat ramp. Then the Whitney Wharf area where, again, Whitney Wharf has to be raised. Whitney Wharf Bridge, Whitney Wharf, which is essentially kind of the condition we're trying to aspire to for the other sites. Then the walkway has to be continued through here. There has to be stabilization in these areas too. Crosses Whitney Wharf, comes up to the 3A Rotary, which Judy's probably the most aware of that. Most likely this thing gets reduced to a roundabout, which is going to create some real estate. So that kind of depicts it the way it is now. I expect there'll be more green space or space in this area. Then gets you to Barnes Wharf, where the Maritime Center is, and last Steamboat, of which the access for anything other than pedestrians is quite difficult. So that's that slide. So I guess we can pop to the next slide, I think.
Can you point out where the showers are? Are they by the porch or?
The showers would end up being outdoors, like around here somewhere, Jim.
Oh, not up against the building?
No, usually they're freestanding. You want to have them closer to the beach. I mean, most of the ones that they do down the Cape are not too far from where you're coming off the beach, and it typically is just and actually it's lower there, so it's going to be it's going to be easier to drain it, and there'd be like a foot wash, and then
and you walk up to the building to change. And
yeah, and the restrooms are quite large because they're handicap accessible. And they were changing, there's like tables and things like that. So there's a fair amount of room, both the men's room and the ladies' room, when you do get to go inside. It's surprising how large they are, each having 2 fixtures, but it's based on handicap standards. They're quite large restrooms. So this is just the objectives of this initiative, is to complement the ongoing master plan study. And I think one question on the site walk was, well, doesn't the master plan kind of do this? And as you know, Judy and the planning board can probably attest, it's a little higher elevation you're looking at, and we're talking what I would say more granular basis. We're trying to get on the ground, what specifically do you want to do, you know, as far as goals and consistency and either benches, lighting, and the like. And we also want to make sure we complement what's being done in the 3A project. Again, Judy can attest that there's a certain amount they've looked at that, but only to the extent that it helps them in public access, and then when it doesn't, we're kind of a blank slate. So I think given we're on the 2024 tip, I certainly see one thing but the planning is going underway now, so the design is underway now. So it is in 2024 we should do this. It's sooner, so that we know that we're dovetailing with the 3A corridor project. And the idea is to identify projects and programs that will further cultural and social activity for people of all ages, and improve our access and linkage to downtown, which is also a big focus of the Route 3A study. And then, last but not least, in every one of these projects, accounting for resiliency to climate change. Then I'm only putting up this slide, I won't talk to it. I just want people to understand the level of things that have been done since that 2007 master plan, the number of initiatives that have been done along the harbor in order for us to be at this point. Between a planning task force, a climate study, engineering and design work for rehabilitation of seawalls, the 3A task force work, and the new Town of Hingham master plan. So there's a lot of other things that have been done that we're trying to understand that are way further than we ever were in 2007. So we have a greater context than I think we ever did in the past. That's good, Katie. So part of this is, again, this is the granular part, where you're going to try to get into certain things. This is actually one that Kevin, the Greenbush grant funded, and Bruce was the chair of the subcommittee of doing these interpretive historical signs. This is one of the first 3. This is actually in the Grove. There's 3 more that were funded this year, and I think there's a plan to maybe do a dozen or more, Bruce, I think, all things considered. Yeah. And I think we've also thought of pushing this on the other side of 3A, because obviously in Hingham's history, there was much more connectivity between, the Station Street side of 3A and the waterfront. So most of the people who own land on the waterfront own things or did part of their activities on what we now consider the land side of 3A. So, and then some of it's as simple as, these are examples of Burlington. I happened to, my wife and I went away for a weekend, and I made a point that we went to Burlington, Vermont, because I wanted to see some of the things they've done. These is, they kind of have done these compactor style things as well as recycling. And this is just an example of kind of a covered, may not be the route we go, but either that, one of our past members of higher development, John Thomas, was big on other gazebos or places that would have shade structures. I don't know if any of you saw the Globe the other day. They were predicting in 2070 that the Boston area may have 90 days that are going to be over 90 degrees. Now, I'm not going to live to see that, but I think overall, it's still something we should think of when we're planning along the waterfront, that maybe some of the sitting structures may want to have shade. It may be one of the relief of that. And even one of the side effects of the walkways we've put in is we see a lot more people walking along the harbor than they ever did before. They're handicap accessible, so you can do it that way, but I think it does that. And then the other idea is information kiosks and harbor activity maps and the like. All right, Kate, you can do the next slide. So some of it is also like physical things other than just amenities. Apologize to Vicky who's not here. That's probably not the type of play area they're envisioning, but it's just the slide I was able to get from someone else. Part of the trust, what the trustees were in charge with was not only the beach, but also play area, and we haven't had one there for the longest time. But I think now having a community room with accessible bathrooms, it'll be open much more than 3 hours on either side of high tide, eight weeks of the year. We can start looking at other activities. A lot of other communities are doing things like, workout stations. There was, the selectmen had a presentation a while back, and I think in the next 10 years, over half Hingham's population is going to be over the age of 60. So I think some of the things as you're looking at that, obviously the play area plays with a different demographic, but it might be a grandparent bringing their grandchild to something like that. But also the idea with some of these very simple workout stations is that they're weather resistant and an easy way to keep the populace in good shape. So those are some of the things we're looking at. And then, as I pointed out, one of the other things is how do we utilize land if it's created by the shrinkage of the 3A rotary? And next slide, I guess. And then the other thing I've thought, and I gave you a copy of a map they have, of a kind of a fold-out map that they do in Burlington, Vermont. Twice the size of Hingham, and I realize it's a much larger community, and they have a bigger waterfront and a bigger downtown. But they've done a pretty good job of linking their waterfront and their downtown, which I don't think we have. And they look at the two in the synergy between them of what you can do. And we almost, when we think of programs, we either have programs in downtown or we have an occasional program in the waterfront. They never interact, And I know Mary Dunham's looking at either other grants for intermodal things or other things like that. Well, then all the more so that we should have some connectivity between our waterfront and our downtown. And I think we could work with the Downtown Association as well as having, if you look at that thing on the backside, it's just all the different activities that they do during a year. And they have activities like 8 or 9 months of the year. We have some that we do, the Touch a Boat, and we sell Christmas trees there, and everyone goes there for the fireworks when we can put them on. But I think we can do a lot more. The picture right here is actually the Situate Maritime Center. And they have a community room about the size of ours, and I thought it was interesting. They add a tent out to their deck, which is about the size of our deck, which would allow you to have functions that are a little larger than we could just inside the building. And given that the money we got, the $350,000 that the trustees got like a few years ago, we have an obligation to repay that to the town. We're going to have to look at activities like this. This is the gazebo in Harwich, where Ed and I have summer places. They have summer concerts every Tuesday, I think it is, during the summertime. You look at all the music groups we have between the conservatory and whatever. We don't use that gazebo hardly at all. This is an example. We have parking between just alone, the trustees have about 280 parking spaces. Now, we need those in the summer, and we certainly need them for the farmers market. But when you get to the shoulder seasons, that's just largely a vacant lot. So here's a case of one of the communities that did like an Alzheimer's walk, and it started from there. Plenty of parking. You could do road races to begin and end there. This is a craft fair that is done, certainly on Sundays, and we could probably get some money to help sustain the whole waterfront activity. So that's kind of what I'm just trying to look at there of different activities. Get that on the last slide. And then it's alternate sources of funding. I know Larry always looks, and the committee does as a whole. Have you looked at other funding sources? And I think initially they talked about the Cultural Council or something, I believe. This wasn't the type of thing they'd fund. We have talked to the Metropolitan Area Planning Council, and we had a meeting with them about 3 weeks ago now. And unlike them hiring a consultant, which we're talking about here, they have in-house staff that does these type of things. Now, I don't think they get quite as granular as I'm talking, of like benches and things like that, but the planning aspect, And the benefit of that, they're going to be an advisory on the commenting on the Route 3A study. So actually working hand in hand with them isn't a bad idea. Problem being, we can't even put an application in until December. We probably wouldn't know until January, February if we were getting any money. So the one thing I want to tell you about financially, we're looking for about $60,000. That it could well be that we may only need 10 to 15,000 to do the things I'm talking about, these kind of maps and plans and things like that, or brochures, and the rest may be picked up by MAPC, but we may not know that until like a month before town meeting. So I know you have some projects looking for money that might get phased, so I'd say, well, maybe that's a thing to look at. We may be almost a bank of sorts if we do get funded, that you could say, okay, we only need to allocate 10 or 15,000 to this project because MAPC will do the rest. And also of interest, they are thinking that they almost ought to roll this into the downtown, and that they were impressed by everything we'd done. We did a walk of the area, and we're impressed by how far along we were, because it's still understand what still has to be done. But they're saying, gee, maybe you should look at this as the downtown or whatever, which I think is a great idea, because I think we need more linkage there anyway. So, and again, that would be done on their dime. Now, we pay money to MAPC anyway, so it's not like we're getting it for free, but we don't get a lot of services from MAPC directly. So I think we have a reasonable shot at getting that. And some of the future things, I think, would be Seaport Bond Council that helped fund the bathhouse, and now that it's going to be a very successful project, we get a better chance of going back to the well for some of these other projects. And then coastal resiliency funding, because the town's being proactive in looking at these wharfs. I think we're going to have, Harbor Development is working with their consultants to really have shovel-ready plans. So that gives us a much better chance. The governor has put up a bond or something for resiliency projects. And the state would want to do it anyway, because quite honestly, we're protecting 3A if we're going to have a resiliency project for our waterfront. And then the other idea, I think Judy mentioned this one time we were having a 3A meeting, is we never really looked into the idea of people help sponsoring certain things. Could you sponsor maintaining players or raising funds for recreational equipment, things like that, knowing that it's just going to be a plaque, that this thing was helped by a donation from so-and-so. And then the reason I put that's a bocce court, which this is not the one they have in Harwich, but that one gets used like all the time, and it's not a very expensive thing to put in. I'm not saying I even know where you would put one, but you're talking a fairly low expense, and the more you're creating kind of a destination down here, those are the fairly inexpensive things you do that would make this more of a destination. I used to hear when I was first on Harbor Development about 10 years ago that no one goes to the harbor, why do anything because no one goes there, and that the Whitney Wharf Bridge was the bridge to nowhere. But we're now seeing people regularly, if they get a coffee at Red Eye Roasters, going across to Whitney Wharf and doing it. So I think we're finally just on the cusp of improving that access. But you look at the fireworks, and I guess we just assumed the Lions could pay for that for forever. But that's certainly a source we could look for other funding, and I've even thought we could use the community room at the new snack stand is a fundraiser for that, like donate that to the fireworks committee, and that they could have that as a viewing area for people who would donate money. So I think that just gives you an idea of some of the things we're looking to do. I didn't get into the money of how much money goes where, but I thought I just wanted to show that I think we need to keep the momentum we have going now in the projects, so that we don't wait. And I think with the other projects moving along, I think we have to be moving with them. So that's kind of it.
Thanks, Alan. Questions? Jim?
Yeah.
A minor thing, but important, as your knees begin to go, is the benches. I mean, they're very much appreciated. And are you going to do benches that are sponsored privately as memorials? Because there are a few that are in honor.
Yeah, that's a good question. That's been done, but it's also been done without any uniform standard. So if you go along, there's probably 3 or 4 different benches along the waterfront. And I think the idea would be to come up with and this is going to be a community process, whether it's MAPC or consultant. And the initial reticence we had and the Harbor Development had was, do we lose control if MAPC has it versus somebody we hire? It's still going to be an interactive process. But I think part of it is exactly that. To say, can we come up with something we all agree is a good bench style? Some covered, some maybe not, but at least some uniformity.
Like the ones downtown.
Yeah, because at least downtown, they have a specific thing. It's kind of like a wrought iron one, I believe, that they use. And we've got some of those, but we've got wooden ones. I mean, to have something that at least feels somewhat consistent. In towns or cities like Burlington, that's kind of what they've done. You go along their waterfront, and I'm sure those parcels were acquired over time, but they have cohesiveness that we don't have, So that's kind of the goal.
Is the study going to look at getting across 3A? Because that's just one of the hardest parts.
That's
what Burlington doesn't have.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Again, as Judy says, because we're on the committee together, I kind of go back to that. I mean, already there was planned to have a way better access across 3A from the STARS location. I've told the story before, but the first day I was on Harbor Development 10 years ago, I was standing by the traffic signal over on the water side. That's a really narrow area, and the young 14-year-old boy asked me if I need help getting across the street. So I think that reinforces how, even from the mouths of babes, even, a lot of people understand this is not a safe activity, and I think that's clearly something that we're looking for. Now, the state isn't crazy about having too many signalized crossings there. Maybe from public input we can get one or two more, but I mean, I think you look at certainly Burdette, where Stars is, and Water Street, because if you're going to Water Street, you almost have to go backtrack to kind of go back, to get back if you're somewhere to get a safe crossing, so, and clearly a bridge over it's not going to happen. You're not going to tunnel under it because of water. I mean, we're stuck with it being there, but I think we can do a better job of what it is, and I use the analogy down the Cape. A lot of times the bike trail crosses state roads, and they have flashers that warn you that somebody's in the walkway. And the state has done them. So there is a precedent for that being done on Route 124, and I go by it all the time, that at certain times of the year it's not going to go off at all, but at least it gives somebody indication of that. And other places like that have done waterfront developments in Coconut Grove and Route A1A goes through there, and people manage to cross more safely than we can right now. There's no question that is something that we have to address.
Other questions?
I guess it's good to hear the Rotary is going to continue, even if smaller.
Yep.
But will the study get into the landscaping around it and the actual fine grain?
Yeah, I mean, I think if they're touching it, to some extent, but I mean, and that's again, actually another good question, because to a certain extent, there's going to be space there. They're not really too worried about how it's going to be used, and I think we have to work with them, that's to see how that is used.
I think we're lucky because at one point they wanted the T intersection with lights, and it's a graceful, great gateway to the town. It doesn't need to be like that.
Right.
So I'm glad you're showing it as.
Yeah, the roundabout. I remember measuring it at one time. The rotary is 165 feet across. It's a significant width, and it's probably going to be at the most 2/3 of that, I would say. And most of the land that's gained is going to be on the water side. Which means that even if it's just access to the Maritime Center, where a lot of kids are actually coming across there. If you've ever walked along that stretch right now where the rotary is, and there's, you feel if a car's coming at you pretty fast, you don't have a whole lot of alternatives, with a small guardrail to your left, so I think that'll be much safer.
What is the ask? You have 60 to 75,000.
Kevin, it's closer to 60, because if you look at at the time we budgeted that, then we got the 3 proposals, and if you look at, they're all like 58 to 62,000. So it's probably going to be 60,000 would actually do it. And again, I think MAPC would do all but 50 grand, probably 45 to 50 grand of that if they were, to take on the initiative of doing the planning. I don't think they're going to get into benches, and I wouldn't mind ending up with something like this out of this study. And this wouldn't cost a whole lot to produce some, pamphlet fold out that we could have a template for and, update. They do it every year. I saw an earlier one. I got to do that. So as you improve things, you slightly change it, and it's a template we could do with our IT people.
So is the ask 60 and you're going to give money back, or is the ask 10, 15, or 20 and hoping to get funding?
I think we'd ask for 60, so we have we could do the study if it didn't come through. But MAPC did like this project quite a bit, and they haven't done something. I'm more optimistic than normal that I think they would do a project like this. Their senior development person, their senior planner came out and spent like 2 hours with us and have given us the follow-up. And I think they haven't done anything of significance in Hingham, so I think we're in a good position. And the fact that we're doing a master plan, we're doing the 3A corridor study, I think they see this as a good time to do this type of project. So.
And when do you think they'll tell
We would
you?
know probably February or March.
So after we have to vote, but before
Before
the
town
deadline
meeting.
of the warrant?
Correct.
Okay.
Before the warrant, you'd know, say, gee, it looks like they'll do, everything. And I don't even know, it could be they would do all the things I'm talking about. I just don't know.
Yeah.
Because I think it's a little beyond, even what, these type of things are beyond your typical harbor study too. Getting into the granular things of some of these activities and plans.
But that's one of my two questions, Alan,
Yeah.
is does the CPC funding go to program? It sounds like this is a programming kind of initiative, whereas I thought that this is part of the open space provision of CPC.
Oh, no, good question. Not into planning it, but we really want to look at what other communities have done. So to me, that's still a planning exercise. Like, what is, anyone's ever seen the East Boston Piers Park, or what Duxbury's done with their Maritime Center, or a lot of communities have received grants in the past, and what have they used them for? I think we're going to have to, form some sort of committee or something to get into the granular stuff I'm talking about. But I just want to see physically, which is a plan, how much area do I need for a bocce court? Or if I had a play area, what's realistic?
Right.
And what's the scale the community wants? More scale things, that still be on a plan. But I'm probably more into this because I see how underutilized it is. Now we're getting something, and I'm probably bigger on that than harbor development is, because I'm starting to say, okay, we're close, but look at what we could do that we don't do, But I think we have to see physically and let people say, do you want this or don't you want it? Some people may think it's fine without having too many programmed activities down there.
Well, and on the programming side, I agree with what you said, that maybe this should be done with the Downtown Association, because if the goal is to have this connectivity, then it would be silly for both organizations to be doing their own programming. So I personally would want to see the programming as a separate effort. Do you know about the PWED grant that we got to do the streetscape downtown when we put in the brick sidewalks and the new lampposts and the benches?
No, I know that there's a funding source, but I didn't know
I
it.
just wonder if that type of
could be.
funding would be available for the harbor as well.
So who gives the money? What's the entity that gives out the money?
There's somebody in the back road who knows.
Okay.
So I could actually.
Can you come to the mic?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
You're forgiven.
Sue, who spoke on behalf of the community center from a business point of view when we were getting the extra money at town meeting, thank you.
Right.
Sue, can you just say your name?
Sue Sullivan, 26 Governor Andrew Road, and I love what you're doing, because this is something that was actually started 10, 15 years ago when we were doing the downtown, and Judy was involved in all, and the PWED grant, and I've got information on that, as well as, I think our planning office has some of the information too.
Sure.
But how you might be able to access some of those funds for that as well. And we have, we did a lot of discussion back then on that connection between downtown and across, and how you can do raised, when you're talking about flashing lights and raised things and all. So it's a terrific, I think this undertaking would be fabulous, so.
Good, thanks.
That's all. That's all I've got.
Thank
The other thing is too, and just to throw out on the benches, and we did do, originally, when we were looking at benches, we were gonna pay, at the time, it was $1,200 a bench, and my understanding now is the ones that we had purchased are closer to $1,500, $1,600 a bench now. We ended up not paying for any of them, because we put it out there to townspeople if anyone wanted to make them memorial benches, where they have the plaques on them, and I think we have 23 of them. So that might be a source of funding as well.
Anytime you want to come up to the table and say ways that CPC doesn't have to give money, you're welcome.
It doesn't mean that I wouldn't advocate that CPC give the 60,000 now, because those are all contingent. So, but if there's a way of doing it,
I know.
I fully support Alan's.
Thank you. I'm just teasing. Other questions or comments? Okay. Okay, Alan, thanks so
Okay,
much.
Thanks.
Thank you, Alan.
Okay.
Convent does a great job they're doing.
Christine, are you presenting with Kevin together? Okay, so next up is the South Shore Country Club Pool Project, and Christine Smith and Kevin Whalen presenting.
I think the PowerPoint part made me the most nervous. It's the blue pool, right, Kevin? It's got to get the,
I don't know if you have to.
I don't know.
Where's a teenager when you need
I
one?
know. It's way past my.
Here he is.
There's the teenager.
There you go.
Well, you know what?
Yeah.
Let's put it on the screen.
Yeah.
Did we get it up there? No.
The person who knows is behind you.
You know?
May I go ask Alan?
I did do it, slideshow.
They were on,
We can see it on, yeah.
I know,
full
very
disclosure, I
lucky
don't know what I'm
we did.
doing. Someone else set this up first.
Yeah.
But check the desktop. Is it one of these?
That's what I was gonna say. On the third one, yeah.
Sure. Yeah, please.
Would she get the timer there? No, that's the pointer. Stick the remote.
Kevin's got the remote too, he's got it right there. Is that for you, Katie? This is my biggest fear come true.
I know.
I would just turn the whole thing off.
Computer.
That's my technological fix.
Turn it back on and give it a kick.
Yes.
It's actually pretty good. It's good. It's not lazy. Well, at home, it looked
We
like.
printed out a couple of them, but not.
Really does.
And our pictures are really good.
I know.
It'll happen.
It does happen. We can talk.
We can hand, do we have more than one? What's that? I knew that was gonna happen.
Mom's probably gone, she's the one.
I think what you're saying is if they do it now, then it's gonna become much more expensive, but if they do it now by doing this, fill the crack and then cover things, it's cheaper, safer. Right.
I know. This is a shame, because we
Save
really
them
want to see
money.
the
No.
pictures.
Well, we have,
Otherwise, it's gonna be much more expensive.
Okay.
Send everybody the,
Judy said turn
No,
it
it's on
off
TV.
and then turn it back on. Sometimes that.
What's my husband's advice?
Yeah.
it's like everybody else's.
I don't know.
Reboot. But we need more people. I know to stay away.
I can guarantee it never runs again.
Yeah.
I had to call my IT guy to get my email to work on my phone.
Oh, right here, do this, put that over, hit that right button for a second.
I've got like 4 different accounts and this one goes this way.
Does that do it?
We're back to blue, we got the blue.
Support sync
Slide 106 down.
phone.
Display settings.
Use
Yay. Sue, is that you? Excellent.
See, you can run in for a reason.
Yeah. All
Good
right.
job.
Well, not a great way to start, but we're up and running. So thank you everyone for having us tonight and for giving us the opportunity to present what we think is a terrific, plan for a new town pool at the South Shore Country Club. And so we thought, I'm Christine Smith, the chair of the Country Club Management Committee. I'm here with Kevin Whalen, who's our executive director, and we're also Sue Sullivan and Bill Friend. I think I've got everybody else from the CCMC who are here to support the project tonight, and also CPC has been a great supporter of the project that's been, sort of developing over the last couple of years. So we thank you for that. We're starting with conceptual design, which is something that's relatively new. Al Kearney, local architect and resident, is a lover of the Country Club and has really helped us out just sort of with the conceptual design, because what I want people to understand is we're talking about a new town pool project, but we understand the context of what needs to be done for a master plan up at the South Shore Country Club that the town has now owned for over 30 years and needs some capital infusion. And we also understand it in the context of the town of Hingham, which is also undergoing a master plan right now. And so I think, in order to see the vision, you've got to look at the pool, look at the country club, and look at the town. And so if you take a look at that conceptual drawing, you'll see up on the upper sort of middle of the picture is where the tennis court is now. We were there a few weeks ago when you had your tour, and that's where we're talking about putting the new town pool. Where the sort of the green looks like a little mini golf. That's where the existing pool structure is today, as well as the maintenance facility that'll eventually be brought down. And then those are some new buildings that we're looking at in terms of a new pro shop and the maintenance facility. And so, Kevin, can you turn to the next slide?
Yep, sure.
I am not a technology person. Let's see.
Hopefully I can.
Don't.
You prefer
Next
to look at
slide.
the
I know.
picture?
There we go.
All right. Thank you, Sue.
Yeah, we could do that. So, yeah, exactly.
And so tonight the ask hasn't changed. What we're looking for from the CPC is the support of $3,050,000, whose proceeds will be used to construct a new town pool located at the South Shore Country Club. If you think about the benefits to the town, there's many of them, and I think they fit nicely with the CPC's, mission and parameters. This application meets, open space, recreational use, as well as historic preservation, because believe it or not, parts of the country club are in an historic district, and we have some nice historic pictures to show you in a few minutes. This also benefits all segments of the Hingham community, from little kids in the swimming pool to senior citizens. It truly is an asset for everyone to enjoy. Another thing to keep in mind is I remember when CPC first started, it always seemed to me that the real focus was on more town-owned property. This is a big town-owned property. It's 157 acres, and it's part of a larger master plan. And if you think about it, I know that the town is facing a lot of capital projects, and this is one nice way to redirect capital into a nice town-owned property for something that's sort of already been levied through the CPC surcharge. So our plan is to be at town meeting in, I think it's April 20th or April 27th of 2020 with 3 warrant articles, the first being hopefully some CPC funding to support this project, as well as the town of Hingham to support sort of that balance between what doesn't get funded between CPC, the balance we get funded by the town of Hingham, and then the South Shore Country Club will be part of that plan. That funding will be to pay more attention to the other master plan portion, which is paying for a new maintenance facility, which happens to be located under the pool. And the fourth financing portion of it would be the fundraising. We're looking to raise $750,000 via the Friends of the South Shore Country Club. That is split into 2 different phases. The first being $450,000 for design construction documents, and $300,000 is about the cost of what a structured bubble would be to cover the pool. And so this has been a bit of a moving target. One of the reasons we sort of fussed with this a bit was we went before the Board of Selectmen on September 19th and made this presentation, and we felt, and we heard loud and clear from the Board of Selectmen that they would really like us to try to get in front of this, to get some funding in place prior to town meeting, which is why we've sort of structured it that way, between $450,000 and $300,000. To date, we've raised, between monies collected and pledges, the total is about $130,000, and we've just sort of started publicizing this new plan. So I think hopefully that number will rise significantly. So for the folks watching at home, if anybody would like to donate to the Country Club town pool, the Friends of the South Shore Country Club has some nice information up on our website. Next slide. I don't know, Kevin comes with a great background in pools because he worked for the state for many, many years, and so we're going to have Kevin talk a little bit about the project, which has changed a bit. A lot of feedback from the town, as well as some expertise that Kevin brings to the table.
I think, last time we were here, we were talking about a larger facility, which was approximately a $12 million project. That was over where our current putting green and learning center is, where we do our camp groups and other lessons over in that area. A couple of things that have changed since then. Obviously, when the pool goes away, that also, the country club will actually lose our maintenance facility as well, which is underneath. So that necessitates us to build a maintenance facility, and by doing that, that creates a cost of about $2 million. So we're looking to do some cost containment, and one of the things we're looking at is, basically downsizing the project from $12 million to the $7 million number that you see here. What that creates is, what we'd be able to do is create a new 8-lane pool with a splash pad and bathroom, locker room facilities and spectator area. It will be built to accommodate a year-round bubble. So everything would be built and designed to have a bubble that would be a year-round, make it a year-round facility. It would be capable of hosting high school swim meets. The pool facility will be created at the current tennis courts, and the courts will be moved to the front of the facility. The existing pool site and maintenance facility will be demolished and repurposed as part of the master plan of the entire country club. And one of the things, we're trying to do is also to be as fiscally prudent as possible. The golf course can only generate so much revenue to pay for all the capital improvements that are needed at the facility. Currently, we're estimating that the cost will be about between $2 and $2.5 million for our maintenance facility, the turf care center that we're going to be calling that. And by doing that, we don't have any extra revenue to actually pay for the pool as well. So we're asking, the town and the CPC to fund that delta between what the country club can pay for. 80% of the revenue that is at the golf course is from golf itself. The bowling and revenues from the lease and things of that nature are much smaller revenue stream for us, and so we want to make sure that we have a facility that is safe for our staff, and also that is it is functioning, and it makes us as efficient as possible when we're maintaining the course and the grounds. We're very fortunate. Our course is in great shape. We've I think we have a great reputation as far as the condition of the course and how we do it. And our staff does a great job, and the facility that they have is, obviously is not the greatest. We have had to currently just, put some money in just to make it safe so they can work inside that building. We've had to spend, about $15,000 over the last couple of years to do that. So, and it's continued, as we move forward. So that's where we kind of are right now. The town meeting will be asked to finance the construction of the pool facility, and the South Shore Country Club will be providing money for the, for the turf care center. As we said, the existing pool is here. The proposed location would be at the tennis courts. One of the things we wanted to make sure that we did is I think right now, there's so much activity in here between golfers, parking, and pool in the summertime, camp groups, SNAP program, that we wanted to look at segregating the pool operation from the golf operation, and that way kind of make it a safer, more family, environment. So we're going to be able to put the parking over here for the pool, and then obviously the golf parking would be over here as well. So you're kind of segregating that to make it a safer operation as we move forward. Go ahead for the next one. So this is a rendering of what the pool would look like. It is from the top parking lot looking north from like where the tent is up on the golf course. And you can see this area, the pool area, is a 165 feet by 155. 15. That's the tennis court. And the pool would be a 75-foot by 75-foot pool with a zero depth entry. And then you would also have enough space to do the spray deck and spray features. And that is a change as well from what we had previously. I think from an operational standpoint, doing a spray deck is a lot more efficient. You don't need lifeguards. It's it's a lot cheaper to run and operate, and it's open all the time. You can also do a much longer shoulder season if you wanted to. You could make it so it's its own separate area, keep it open much later into September and things of that nature, where the pool could be closed if you wanted to, but also have the spray deck open. So it gives you a lot of flexibility to provide some recreation in the shoulder season. So this is the look from where the rendering was. You'd be looking, from the top parking lot down, and that's where we proposed that the pool would go. So one of the things, the other reason why we're looking to change, we talked about, the finances and cost containment, but the other thing is revenue as well. Currently, we have the learning center, the golf learning center, which is the driving range is over in here. We have our putting green, and we have a chipping area here. And one of the things we do with camps, we make a significant amount of money with camps and ladies' nights and things of that nature that we do as far as our golf lessons. And with any of our bigger lessons, what we do is you have basically a rotation of everyone. And so we do about $100,000 in revenue in lessons and camp groups. And so, you have a group over at the driving range, and you'll have a group over here at the chipping area, and then you'll also have another staff person in the putting, and they kind of rotate from one discipline of golf to another. So I think, if we did have the pool there like we originally spoke about, it would take away this whole area here, and we would not be able to kind of do the camp groups and things of that nature as we currently do. So I think it's important that we kind of put it at the pool where we currently are proposing. So this
Picture's
is
worth 1,000 words. I remember we all had a visit. This is looking at the side of the existing pool with the maintenance facility underneath. And I think just by looking at that picture, you can see we have lived beyond its useful life. Right.
And we have here, you can see, we just spent, some money. We're shut down for almost 2 months because the area here, this cement here was falling down, and we had the engineer design this plan where we put up a metal beam with reinforced by 4x6 pilings, and it goes down and it's to footings down here below. So we just had that done in the last 3 weeks. So we're able to actually utilize that maintenance facility that we haven't really been able to use for the last 2 months. So we haven't been able to fix any of our equipment or any of those type of things. So it's been really, difficult to keep the continuity as far as our operation in place, here. So now that we got that open, at least it's a temporary fix, but it's something that we're glad that's done. So that's just one of the things that's happening. Now we have to go back and reinforce the ceiling because we have delamination of the concrete in this bay over here. So it's a constant battle to keep the building operational.
And safe.
And safe. And I think one of the things is the pool has always been safe. It's what really has happened is that the long-term water infiltration into the cement has degraded the concrete in many instances and just settling of the concrete. And so it's more, the concern from a safety standpoint is more of our staff down in the maintenance facility itself. Okay. This is the people that did the...
So BH&A, Bergen, Hendry, and Architect, actually, they were the firm that we hired to do the $75,000 feasibility study. They did a great job for us. We got a lot of nice things out of that feasibility study, including the town survey showing that people wanted a town pool and they would like that town pool to be available on a year-round basis. BH&A has done the Situate Senior Center is one of their projects they're working on now. They're doing something in Wayland. It's a firm out of Boston, about a 50-person firm. We went back to them, and they're interested in helping us move forward with this new town pool. So they have put together, kind of based upon their experience and based upon our project, what they think the cost will look like. And so we've put that before you tonight, and we would hope to continue to do some work with BH&A.
Right, and it's important, Canton, the town of Canton just had done a similar type project. Their projects actually came in under what they expected the bids. The bids came lower and lower, and they did the pool for approximately $4.8 million. So, and it's somewhat similar project.
Just sort of another breakdown of ways to look at the hard costs versus the soft costs. If you take a look at it, the construction cost estimate, $5.3 million, that includes the bathrooms, because we would be building this to code, very different than the pool that we have today. You actually have to walk through a building that has showers and bathrooms. That tends to be the majority of those costs.
Yeah, the square footage is, whatever the size of the square footage of the water, there's a calculation that DPH has that basically that is what you have to have for number of shower stalls, bathroom stalls, and things of that nature in the facility. So the structure that we're going to have is proposing it would be a heated structure, which is different than what like the town of Canton did, so it will be a little bit more money. The other thing that we will do in these costs will be basically building a channel around, so if you did do a bubble in the future, you'd be able to attach it, put it right in, it would be ready to accommodate, a bubble, so we would be able to do year-round use.
Oh, is the bubble not definite then?
So the bubble is, I think, what we're proposing is that we would build, it's more of a rip and replace project. We would be replacing what we have currently and what's outused its useful life, and then what the fundraising portion of the project would be, of the bubble project, would be done by fundraising. So the Friends Group would fundraise to kind of make it a year-round project.
So it's an outdoor pool at first, like now.
Right.
And then people that want to swim in the wintertime can pay for it.
Right, exactly. Well, essentially, right, through fundraising efforts and things of that nature. And so I think what we're asking the town to do is replace exactly what the country club has had and what the town has had in the past.
So is the bubble demountable seasonally?
Christine, can I jump?
So the bubble will actually come down, and like say, you can bring it down every year. So you'd bring it down, like say in Memorial Day, so we'd have outside recreation, and then in say September you would put the bubble back up.
Sounds great.
Much like the Weymouth Club does and other places do.
Is this your last slide? Is your presentation done?
Almost.
Almost done.
Okay, I would say let's hold the questions and
Okay.
keep going, and then
Sue,
we'll.
okay.
Yeah.
Did you want to add something, Sue? Or you good? Okay.
I was just gonna add that the bubble, when the survey was done of the town, it came back overwhelmingly that the town wanted a year-round facility if possible. So that's why the bubble, while it's thought of as not part of the funding for here, it's truly part of the plan if we were to go by what the town wants, and that's where the private fundraising comes in.
Our goal has always been to have a year-round facility.
Let's just finish the
Yep.
presentation, because there's.
Okay, so this is a pool that was recently done in Stoughton. We're showing you some comparable pools in other, locations. You can go to the next one, Sue. And this is another one that was done in Belmont, and some towns that are very comparable that we use as benchmarks to the town of Hingham. Go to the next one. This is one in Needham, which is a $12.5 million, $14 million total project cost. And then the next one would be in Wayland. And this pool is actually bubble. They do bubble this particular facility, and then it does operate as a year-round facility. And do you want to?
Sure. So a nice historical picture. The country club. Just some quick facts. 100th anniversary is in 2022. Wouldn't it be nice to make a nice, capital infusion into a property that has served the town so well for over 30 years? A smart group of people over 30 years ago put this together, and to be a good steward of the town. We would really like to continue to make a capital investment in that property. Purchased for $8 million, worth over $18 million today. There's been minimal capital investment. It is an enterprise fund, which I think it was set up that way by our forefathers. It makes a lot of sense, which is why we're looking at doing the funding the way we are today, breaking apart the pieces of what's sort of golf-centric versus what's town pool-centric. It is one of the only hugely income-producing properties in the town of Hingham. It generates close to $2 million a year at a break-even. It's 157 acres of open space. If you think about that, it is a significant part of the town of Hingham. 18-hole golf course, town pool, restaurant, banquet facility is used all the time by many local groups. We have a bowling alley. We have tennis courts. It truly is a town asset. So next slide. And just, one thing just to really keep in mind, it's a town asset. There's many, many benefits to the town of Hingham. Town departments, most people don't realize, but we mow the fields and we maintain a lot of the fields in town with our equipment. We have a weather alert system that is available to everyone in town. We partnership with Hingham Recreation, over 13,000 pool visits per season. That's how many people use the pool. In a town of 22,000 people, not to have a town pool, I think would just be a real shame. Sports camps, golf lessons, swim lessons, summer employment, where there's a ton of kids that work up there. Great experience for all of them. They use the bowling alley. We have pool memberships. The Haunted Hayride was a couple weeks ago that we worked on with Hingham Rec. That's a big success that people look forward to. The SNAP, the Special Needs Athletic Partnership, they run their programs up there in the summer. The bowling alley is nice and air conditioned. They don't get to use the pool very often because it just hasn't been appropriate. If you think about it, 30,000 rounds of golf annually. The other nice thing about this property is it's a municipal course. It's used by residents and non-residents, so kind of a nice way to generate some revenue for the town for maybe people that don't live in Hingham. Some people say to me, all the time, can't you make more money at the country club? But the thing you have to keep in mind is home to Hingham high school girls and boys. We don't charge them to golf at the country club. So there's a lot of things that maybe if you were a private entity that you could do, but we don't do that because it's a service that's offered by the town. Junior golf memberships, we had 75 of them. They played a lot of golf this summer. I participated in Wednesday night ladies golf night. If anyone hasn't done that's another great way to get new people up to the course to really focus on the women. We host the Selectmen's Cup, which benefits the 4th of July parade that we've been hearing a lot about lately. 7 bowling leagues. A lot of senior citizens take part in that. Golf simulators, that was put together a few years ago to augment the seasonal nature of golf. It is a seasonal business, so we try to sort of balance that out, and those have been hugely successful. We'll be buying them in the next month or so. And the Friends of the South Shore Country Club was organized just to support the capital projects identified by the Country Club Management Committee. We've had some nice commitments from the Hingham Sports Partnership as well as SNAP. And we've done, some extensive research. I think people think that it's taken us, what's taken so long? We really had to kind of take a step back for what was proposed with a large outdoor pool, and take a look at the real sources of revenue. We even looked at doing a land lease. People said, spend $50 million, knock the whole thing down, and start all over again. And we looked at that. But if you did something like that, it would sort of be like having the Weymouth Club in Hingham that really didn't feel Hingham. So I just throw that up there just to let people know that we have really spent a lot of time in looking at all different aspects of the country club and specifically of the pool. And I think for all these reasons, the support of the CPC and the town of Hingham to have a town pool would be crucial, because if we don't get the support, my fear is that we won't have a town pool. And I think that is a good steward of the property that we purchased over 30 years ago. That needs to be a real focus going forward. So, thank you.
Thanks. I just have a couple of questions and then I'll open it out. I think one thing you didn't say is we currently don't have a pool, right?
Thank you for pointing that out, Larry. Yeah, the pool, for those that don't know, has been deemed, it's closed indefinitely. The pool has failed. We've had a structural engineer for the last 6 years or so that has continued to certify the pool and the maintenance facility were safe to operate, and that we got the report at the end of the summer that going forward we'll not be reopening the pool. So we do not have a town pool.
Okay, and let me just ask you a couple of quick money questions. So it's said toward the top of the discussion that the pool was about $7 million. So you were asking CPC for about $3 million. So the other warrants to the town was going to be for about $4 million.
Mm-hmm.
But then you said that it looks like the new pool might only be about 5.3, not 7.
Well, if you look at the all-in costs, I mean, that's the construction cost. You have to pay, design money, so that's $450,000. So it's all of the other things that go into that total.
And then, am I correct that it sounds like the pool would start as an outdoor pool, but the locker rooms and the bathrooms would be situated in such a way that it could become an indoor pool? Like that could be phased. It wouldn't have to happen up front.
No, I think it'll happen. I think the structure that we'll build is the same, regardless if you operate as a seasonal pool or a year-round pool. So to me, the deltas are things like when you build the building that has the bathrooms, we're going to heat them. Why would I build it without heat? So if the pool's open in January, it will be warm. The bubble would go right up to the edge. If you've been to the Weymouth Club, the bubble sort of goes right up to the edge of that building. That's what we're envisioning. So,
Essentially, we would try to build something that would be bubble-ready, that, the only thing that it wouldn't have would be the bubble, and probably like the air handlers and things of that nature, the infrastructure to basically, that would blow up the bubble. But everything else would be ready to go, just because it obviously makes sense to do that if that's the vision and the long-term vision.
So the indoor capacity would kind of come at the same time?
yes.
Right.
Okay. Others?
And that's important, Larry, because one thing that we've heard doing the private fundraising is people want a year-round pool. So people would like to donate for a year-round pool, not so much maybe for a seasonal pool. So it's just something to keep in mind. And if you sort of look at what the town owns now, it's a seasonal pool. The extras is where the fundraising comes in.
I have a question. Thank you guys for all this work that you've done for this. It looks really good. This $4 million that you talked about getting on the warrant from the town, would that be borrowing? Do you have a commitment for that from whom, except for town meeting, but
Right.
from the selectmen to get it there? And what kind of flexibility is there with that number and the $3 million number that you're asking for from the CPC?
I think we're just going to have to work really closely together, because when we went before the Board of Selectmen back in September, this is sort of the structure that we proposed. And so I think they're sort of waiting to see where CPC comes out in terms of your funding dollars as to how that would back into the dollar amount being asked for by the town. And this is something that wasn't, if you listen to the, Mary Power put forth a great capital plan 18 months ago, and she just updated it. So I think this has been on everyone's radar screen, but not necessarily for this year. But now it's sort of become a crisis mode, because now we don't have a pool, and the longer we go without the pool. So the Board of Selectmen are, they're aware, and I think everyone needs to work in conjunction to see how we divvy up that pie.
So you don't know if this is from capital outlay or from bond?
My understanding is it would be from a bond.
Other questions?
Excuse me, when the fundraising for the bubble would start, would that start as soon as the pool was done? Or?
It's been ongoing. It started now.
Do people know that? It's good to hear.
Yep, they do. Yep, I think so. I'd like more people to hear about it. But we've had many articles in the in the Hingham Journal and the Anchor, in the Patriot Ledger. There's a 501c3, the Friends of the South Shore Country Club. It's a website. We've raised about $130,000.
The bubble fund.
It's all part of the general fundraising
For the pool.
But how much do you need for the bubble? Or is that too hard to ask?
It'd be about a little over $300,000.
300.
Yeah.
But you're not asking for that.
We're not asking that from it, no.
Right.
But that's what you need to raise from the town.
Right.
That's not bad.
Yeah.
For what you get.
Bob?
About
You
$350,000.
talk about it's gonna go where the tennis courts are,
That's correct. Yes.
and you're sure you can do it there? I mean, are their neighbors are concerned, is there wetlands, is there something you have
so
to
from
do
a
to
from
see
a
what
wetland
structure you do
standpoint,
there?
yeah, we've talked to both town officials, Emily as far as from and Lonnie as from a wetland standpoint. There's no issues there. We believe that there wouldn't be any issues from a zoning standpoint either.
Great.
As far as the neighbors, we have not spoken to neighbors. There's not all that many neighbors. There's a few.
No, I know some of the neighbors, so they're aware there's a project going on. We actually just working with the assessor's office. We have a list of abutters, which surprisingly I think it was 97 abutters. If you sort of think of 157 acres and all the different people that touch it, but it's a good location. It's an existing location. The tennis court is there. I don't know if you go to the Weymouth Club, but the site of that pad and the size of it is pretty close to what they have up at the Weymouth Club. So you can sort of see the size and the context with and without the bubble. And it works well.
And one of the things we didn't speak to, we made the pool 75 feet by 75 feet, which is 25 yards. So you can do a good lap swim on the one end, and at the same time do lessons. So we kind of try to make it as functional as possible, so you can do multiple programming at the same time.
Something I heard is that it's very expensive to have an indoor pool, that it's so easy to lose money rather than stay. What is that, just hearsay, or is that a concern? Or?
Well, I think operationally, pools are definitely a challenge. I mean, there's no question about it. I think obviously you'd have to work to keep your expenses in line and with your operating expenses along with your income. It is going to be a challenge. I think there's many different revenue streams, but at the same time, it's the aquatics business is a tough business. So to try to break even or not to have like an operational deficit will be a challenge.
And I think that's one of the things, Larry, that people have to start. You can look at, sort of government. It's a service, right? But it's also, in the case of an enterprise fund, it's a business. But in order to pay for something like a $7 million pool, it's really more of a service. I look at it that way. And most of the towns, we're sort of in the middle of this now. We're doing a lot of benchmarking and calling on and seeing other projects that work. But they're break even. And it's more expensive to heat a pool in January than it is to heat a pool in July. And I really think it's going to be, sort of a town meeting discussion. I mean, between the boards of, advisory and CPC and CCMC, we need to have a broader discussion about what are the priorities of the town and what is it that they think is reasonable to pay for.
But it sounds as though the bubble will be a big moneymaker. I mean, you'll have a year-round income stream rather than just seasonal. And so it should pay for itself pretty readily, wouldn't it? I mean, you have 3 or 4 months of summertime swimming, and you get people paying to use it all year.
Yeah, I think, obviously your programs there'd be a multitude of programs that you would have to try to generate as much revenue as possible. Everything from like master swimming classes in the morning to, aerobics and things of that nature. But it is, it's challenging. It is expensive to run a pool as far as staffing, lifeguards,
teams,
all those different things, swim teams. There's so many different things that you would have. But at the end of the day, with all recreation, everybody wants that coveted kind of 4 to 8 hour window as far as.
Well, is it free to residents and charged for non-residents?
It would be, you'd have to charge for non-residents and residents.
And
Obviously,
that
it would
should
be
be
so
a lot.
much like we do with golf, that we would probably give a discount to Hingham residents, but you'd be charging.
Yeah, worth it.
Residents can charge.
Thanks.
Sue,
Yeah,
did you
residents
want to come up and add something? 'Cause-
Sorry, no, I'm
No,
not.
that's okay.
I was
but
just saying residents get charged now.
But was there something else you had wanted to say from earlier? No. Other questions, Judy?
Will there be tennis courts in the plan, and will those be built sort of over time by the country club itself, or will there be another ask?
Yeah, I think that's something that we would look to replace the tennis courts, eventually down the road. One of the things that's important for us is the sports camps, and part of that sports camp is the tennis. I think we wouldn't need the footprint that we have here at this point in time. I think we could probably go down to 1 court or maybe 1 or 2 courts. We wouldn't need the footprint of a 3-court tennis facility. It doesn't get the use. The main use that we do have for the tennis courts is just really with the sports camps.
And keep in mind, there's also that master plan committee that I think they're looking at tennis courts as well in addition to fields. And the other thing we keep hearing a lot about is pickleball. So I think that's all part of, we're going to build something, we want to build it right. So where are you going to put it, and how big will it be, and what will it contain? So that's part of what we're looking into as well.
But I think, one of the things from a cost standpoint too is the parking is readily available right with this, and all the utilities are right there. The sewer is right there, the electrical, everything is right there. So I think from all that standpoint, from a logistics standpoint, I think it makes a much better flow of parking, and kind of keeping, the golf in the swimming, family swimming, visiting the pool, just keeps it safer, makes it a safer, facility by doing that.
Others?
If everything went as planned, when would there be a pool?
Well,
So in referencing Hingham, Canton again, they got their money to do design last December from the selectmen. They were able to do the design, go to town meeting in the spring, and then actually go to bids, and they got they did a 2.5 override, and they got the bids in August. They went up to construction in October, where they awarded in October. So that was like less than a year they were able to do that. I think, our timeline's probably gonna be about 18 months. If we were able to, get the words to go forward as far as construction in April, it'd probably wouldn't be next year, obviously, but it could possibly be the year 2021.
and Canton's talking about even maybe opening this summer. I don't know if
Yeah,
it's going to
they
go
are-
that
they're
quick, but I
talking-
mean, that would be, from December of
Yeah,
of
December of
2018 till They opened in July of 2020, so it's about,
Right.
that's about 18 months of
And their pool was operational the whole time, so they stopped, obviously they're doing the construction right now. They awarded, like, I believe in September, they did the award, and they're starting construction in October. And it all depends as well on, obviously with weather and things of that nature and what you're able to do over the winter. And, this year might not be, might be a little tougher than what it has been in the last few years, but, all those things. But I would say it'd be like about an 18-month window.
Do you know what the fees will be?
The fees, no, we haven't gotten to that granular detail as far as what the fees
Because
would
the
be.
Weymouth MDC pool is free, but it's at the other end of town.
Although it's not free any longer.
Oh, it isn't? Oh, I didn't
No, DCR now has an agreement for the town of Weymouth to operate the pool and the rink, and they do charge now, and it's $5 for every visit.
Haven't been for a while.
Yeah, it's only been, that's recent.
And then, just so you, I mean, Hingham Rec does the, we partner with them, they run the pool for us, and I know that Mark Thor was looking at doing something. He talked about a family membership of, $375, an individual membership of $150. Not written in stone, but we have, we're going through that exercise now.
Other questions, comments? Deirdre, do you want to come to the mic?
I can yell.
Yeah.
In September, did the pool fail or the safety of the maintenance facility?
Well, so the overall structure has been compromised. We have done a significant amount of work to stabilize the foundation of the pool. So I do think the pool itself, if the maintenance facility wasn't there, I don't know whether it would be able to open. I think that would be something that we would have to ask the professional engineer. But the pool itself is like, when it operates, the water infiltrates from the pool through the foundation, and over the last, the pool is 70 years old, what happens is the metal in the cement is basically rotting away because of the chlorine and things of that nature that are in the water from the pool.
In the maintenance.
So what's happened is now the cement has fallen from the cement is, basically peeling away and falling down. So it's a safety issue for the maintenance area, but it is an issue because the pool continually leaks. So if we fix everything and if we have, I don't know whether the professional engineer would come back and allow us to open it. I don't know.
And so what it specifically says, Deirdre, we have the memo from its Apex Engineering, and it's a one-pager, but it is the recommendation of this office that the pool is to be shut down and the water removed indefinitely, which to me, the pool is shut down.
Do you think if you move the maintenance facility, you could temporarily reopen the pool for a year or so?
I don't think anyone would sign off on it.
I think that's the question, whether you could get the professional engineer to put his license on it to be able to do it. That is something that, we could entertain at some point, as far as, but I think, if we're moving in the direction where we're trying to move as quickly as possible, we do the maintenance facility, to make sure that our people are safe, and I think that would be the next question, that if we're able to do that, would we be able to get a year out of the pool, so we can do a bridge year? That might be something that we might be able to do, but I can't state that we were able to do that. I mean, that's the professional engineer would need to do the necessary inspections to make sure that it's safe.
And plus, and keep in mind, just one thing, we just bought $450,000 worth of equipment that we need the maintenance shed to, service that equipment, and we haven't been able to do so. So it's all related.
Other questions? Yes?
I'd just like to ask.
Can you say your name?
Catherine Hessian, 6 Taylor Lane. Is it an enclosed facility totally off the table?
Like a hard structure?
A hard structure. And if it is, I also would like to ask about the bubble. How energy efficient is running something like that? It seems like it wouldn't be very energy efficient.
Well, part of what we're doing in putting this project together too is we talk about sort of doing like a net zero. I mean, there's parameters that we're looking for, but bubbles today are a lot different than bubbles when I was younger. I don't know if you go to the Weymouth Club, but if you go and you look at that bubble, it's much more energy efficient than it used to be. But sort of the reason that we had to leave the building behind was the cost, was the location, and this just seems to sort of check a few more boxes. You can operate it seasonally, but if you put the bubble up, I think it's sort of what do I want versus what do I need, and it will, I think it'll serve the community well. So I don't know if that answers your question, but, and then the other thing that also was sort of brought to mind is that a lot of people who swim, the summer is so short-lived here, when you swim, you don't want to swim outside. You want to swim outside, you don't want to swim inside, and the way we had that structured, it was an indoor pool for the lap swimming part. So I think this is kind of a good balance.
Others?
If the bubble is transparent or translucent, it would collect heat anyway, wouldn't it?
So, yeah, I mean, I can.
We'll get more information
yeah,
about the
the
bubble.
light does come through, but you'll have lighting in there as well.
I mean, it would get heat from the sun if it's translucent.
Yeah,
Jim, I think we're just not up to this yet.
Yeah,
No, I know.
we're getting there.
The bubble's not part of this proposal.
It's not.
No,
Right.
no, it's not.
But it's the intriguing part.
Thank you so much. If
Great.
nobody else has any questions, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Seconded. All in
Thank
favor?
you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.